Saquon, of course, is having a legendary season. But where would you guys rank it off the top of your head amongst the greatest running back seasons of all time?
I have to look at a list.
I was gonna say
So
I'm not
I
100%
got
sure.
a list.
I mean, it's up there.
Because I've heard people say, "Oh, it's the great like
It's definitely
top
like top
5,
50.
top 10." I don't know if it's top 10.
I don't. I was gonna say I'm
Top
like
10?
it's got to be
You don't
like
know if it's top 10?
It's okay. It's got to be top 10.
it's got to be top 10. It might be fringe top 5.
Okay, so
Might be.
that's what I was hoping for. That somebody would think it's for sure top 10. Colin's saying close to top 5. I have
That's just off the top of my head.
off the top of your head. That's fine. Which of course I did some research. I looked up what is known as the 11 best seasons from a running back. And I want to compare Saquon's
I did them all in my
season.
head. I know exactly where I'm going to put him. I know exactly where he's going, and he is top 5.
Okay.
Okay, this is wild.
Okay. So just to recap, if Saquon does not play the final week of the season, which we're assuming, Saquon is going to finish with 2,005 rushing yards, 13 touchdowns, 278 receiving yards, and 2 receiving touchdowns. Like I said, that's a great season. Great season. Let's compare that season. And let me get this. I'm not trying to degrade Saquon's season at all. I just want to compare a legendary season to other legendary seasons. So let's compare it to last year CMC. Christian McCaffrey had 1,459 rushing yards with 14 rushing touchdowns, paired up with 564 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. How would we compare those two seasons?
Give me Saquon.
Yeah.
No question.
CMC's year is amazing, and that's where it's going to be difficult with these is like the receiving yards. But I think Barkley has almost 300 receiving yards too. Like he's not
just under.
He's no scrub. He just doesn't have the touchdowns, but I think 2,000 yards mean more. So yeah, I'm gonna go Saquon.
Okay. Next up, I have 2005 Sean Alexander. Won the MVP this year.
Madden cover.
Yep. He had 1,880 yards, 27 touchdowns. He had 78 receiving yards with 1 touchdown.
Give me Saquon.
Saquon? That one's kind of crazy to me. 27 touchdowns, Marshall.
How many
What's
yards?
Saquon at?
Saquon has 21 total. I'm sorry, hold on.
How many
I
yards?
mean, if you
did
think
Sean
about it,
Alexander-
how many
I'm
of
sorry.
those were robbed from him?
I'm sorry. Saquon has 15 total.
How many yards does Sean Alexander have?
27 rushing touchdowns.
No, how
He
many
has-
yards? How many yards?
He has
1,800.
300 less yards.
1,880.
300 less yards, but double the touchdowns, basically.
I think I'm gonna take Saquon.
That's crazy to me, honestly.
See?
Mm.
Colin,
I mean, I feel like I got to stick to my agenda. This touchdowns are what matters. So, but I will say I think that Saquon probably got quite a few of those robbed from him
Which
playing
is
in
fair.
Philly. But
Yeah, give me. I wanted to look at another stat. Give me Saquon.
yeah,
5.1 a carry from Sean Alexander compared to Saquon's 6. And a lot of those touchdowns were robbed from him because Jalen Hurts is a tush push. And Saquon sat in some of those games. He sat in blowouts. I'm taking Saquon.
Yeah, I think
that's actually a good point.
if you were to show me blind stats, I would pick Sean Alexander, obviously. But like when you put it in the context of how many 1-yard touchdowns that Jalen Hurts had, even if you give half of them to Saquon, you're adding 5 touchdowns, even if you only had half of them. So it's like I'm gonna default to who I think is the better player, and I would say it's Saquon. So like that's what I'm gonna go with.
That is very interesting.
This year,
I understand
Jalen Hurts
I
has
understand your point with that.
14 rushing touchdowns.
I understand.
Yeah, so then he's
I
at
understand Alex's point
22
with
if
that
you give him
one,
half of
100%.
those.
Like I said, I'm just defaulting it to, and Alexander won the MVP, so like that is a big plus on his side. But I just think Saquon's better. I that's what it boils down to me.
But who had the better season? That's not the argument. Who's better? The better
Just-
season.
I want to say which season is better.
yeah, and I understand statistically his season looks better, but when you put it in context, I think it's Saquon.
I'm gonna stay locked in.
All right, moving on. 2009 CJ 2K. He had 2006 rushing yards.
Are you going in order of years, or are you just going?
I'm just going in order of like what was listed as the top.
Okay.
Top listed. So 2009 CJ 2K. He had 2006 rushing yards with 14 rushing touchdowns, 503 receiving yards with 2 touchdowns.
It's.
But you're telling me he had one more yard than Saquon?
One more yard than Saquon.
One more yard is crazy.
One more touchdown.
well, there we go. I mean,
Shut the fuck up.
200 more receiving yards.
Give me Saquon.
that's the thing is like statistics are like such a bad measuring stick, you know, because like they don't tell the
That's
full
a crazy
story.
quote.
I know it's close, but
Yeah, I'm also going to go Saquon, even though he didn't have as much. But this is also something I wish I would have said with Sean Alexander. A big thing I think you got to take into account here is the era. Like, they were running the ball so much more in 09. And it was so much more of like run-driven football. So Saquon doing it in 2024, I think holds more weight than if somebody had the exact same stats 10, 20, 30 years ago.
that's true because he has like.
That's why I think
significantly
Don
less carries
Hudson
than,
is a
like,
top
most
10
of these
wide
guys.
receiver of all time.
That
He won 3 Triple Crowns. I don't want to hear it.
no, yeah, back when fucking 5 people were playing wide receiver. So
Exactly, the time and error. Moving on, 2006 MVP LaDainian Tomlinson, 1,815 rushing yards, 28 rushing touchdowns, 508 receiving yards with 3 touchdowns.
I'm gonna go LaDainian Tomlinson.
And that makes 0 sense because you took Barkley over Sean Alexander.
I'd rather have LT over Sean Alexander. I'm kind of on the same page as Donnie. I think LT's a better player than Sean Alexander, and he averaged what I just looked at it. He averaged 0.2 more yards a carry. He had the 1 extra touchdown, a little bit more overall yardage. He was technically a little bit better than Sean Alexander.
For the reason that you just gave, Dallas, you just gave for his pick being crazy. I'm going to use as my justification for going LT here because I got to be consistent with my thoughts.
yeah, I understand Dallas' point if it sounds crazy, but also Prime LT is fucking that guy. The Chargers didn't have an offense outside that fucking guy. Like he was. Like, Saquon is the engine of the Eagles' offense, but they also have Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown. Like, LT had Antonio Gates, which is awesome, but it's also a tight end. And then Phillip Rivers, who's a good quarterback, but not like an all-time great quarterback. So, yeah, give me LT.
All right, moving on. 1973 O.J. Simpson. In 14 games,
OJ.
2,003 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns, 70 receiving yards, no receiving touchdowns.
OJ, 100%.
My concept so fast, OJ. The era is so much different, but it's OJ. It really is. It's just if it was 16 games, no, and I know the era is different, but it was some tough football back then. So 14 games is wild.
People were dying on the field back then.
Shit, they died a couple years ago, but hey.
Yeah. I'm gonna go OJ. I am.
Yeah, I'm with Marshall. I know statistically it's not like crazy, but to rush for 2,000 yards in 14 games, it's like Jerry Rice's 22 touchdowns in 12 games. Like,
that's insane.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So much more for the fact that he did it in the amount of games. So
could you imagine betting in the 90s and it's like, should we take Jerry Rice anytime touchdown? It's like, you mean 2+ touchdowns? Like
at minus 500. So honestly, it might not be a good bet. But yeah, give me OJ. 2014 is fucking wild.
Yeah.
All right.
He's a killer on and off the field.
Allegedly.
No gloves. Go Bit.
Next up, we got 1998 Terrell Davis. He did win the MVP this season. 2,008 yards rushing, 21 rushing touchdowns with 217 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns.
Huge Terrell Davis. I think Terrell Davis is great, but I'm going Saquon.
Yeah. We don't have to go in order. This is kind of a free-form thing. You don't have to look at it.
All right, well, we've been going in order, other than you jumping out for your favorite player ever, OJ.
And he did. OJ.
That was the only one you haven't gone
because
second.
it was 14 games. I was like,
That was
there's no
okay,
way.
but it was still the only one you haven't gone second for. So
Yeah, I'm gonna go Saquon.
yeah, Terrell Davis had crazy years, but I'm gonna go with Saquon.
All right. This one was kind of, which year do I pick? Do I pick 1999 Marshall Faulk or 2000 Marshall Faulk? I decided to pick 2000 because that was the year he won MVP. They were pretty similar years anyway, but Marshall Faulk, he had 1,359 yards rushing, 18 rushing touchdowns with 830 receiving yards and 8 receiving touchdowns in 14 games.
Man, that toughens it up. I didn't realize they played 14 games in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Well, he did. He only played 14 games.
Oh,
that makes
okay.
sense. I was
Okay.
gonna say. Damn.
And I think that was the reason I picked 2000 versus 99, because 99 he had the all scrimmage record, but
I'm gonna
2000
go-
he won the MVP in 14 games.
I mean,
I'm gonna go.
imagine a running back
Kind
winning
of
the
crazy
MVP.
that he didn't win the MVP the year that he had
I
that
know.
scrimmage record.
Well,
I know.
imagine a running back today winning the MVP and they didn't even play in every game. That would be that's fucking crazy.
That
to
is
think.
insane. Yeah,
I'll go Marshall Faulk.
I think I'm gonna go. Marshall Faulk.
Yeah, I think it was close before you said 14 games. I probably would have leaned Saquon, but to do it,
That's what I was doing. Is I was leaning Saquon still. I was like,
I think that-
and then he said
I
in
think that
14
edges
games,
it.
and I was like, oh.
I think the edge is in Falk's favor. Plus, that was in 2000, like 800
2000.
receiving yards from a running back in 2000.
See, that's the thing
Like-
is you're getting close to 1,000 receiving yards as a running back. I was like that because at first I was like, oh, 1,300 yards, like that's really not a lot. And then he was like 800 receiving yards in 14 games, and I was like,
That's-
well, shit.
That's what almost 100 yards a game on the ground, and then fucking 80 something in the air every game. Like that's
Well,
Yeah,
99
roughly. Oh, I guess like 70. Actually.
99 when he did break the scrimmage record, he did have 1,000 receiving yards.
yeah, that's crazy.
So that was those 2
Fuck
years
crazy.
might be the greatest 2 years a running back's ever had.
He did that shit. He did that shit back when that didn't happen. Imagine if he was like today. He's really the CMC of 20 plus years ago.
Yeah,
All right, the biggest talk of the town right now, 1984 Eric Dickerson. Eric Dickerson, of course, had the record for most rushing yards in a season with 2,105 yards, 14 touchdowns, paired up with 139 receiving yards and 0 touchdowns.
Give me Saquon. Give me Saquon. He had about 40 more. Eric Dickerson had about 40 more touches. Give me
a
Saquon.
solid point.
Eric Dickerson, I also felt like was like the biggest running back ever.
This one's tough.
There's also got those goofy ass breasts. Huh?
Did Dickerson win MVP that year?
He did not.
It's kind of crazy.
I think I'm gonna lean Dickerson. Just like ever so slightly.
This one is really tough. This one I feel like you could truly go either way. I'm gonna go with Dickerson just because he does have the record, and that needs to be respected, even if he did have 40 more touches. Because we didn't do that. In his fairness, we didn't do that with any of these other guys. We didn't ask how many touches they all had. So, in fairness,
to be fair, I have. So, in my friend, I've literally every person that else has said I've gone and looked at how many carries and their yards per game.
Okay, looking it up
me
is
and
not the
Colin,
same
the
as
normal
asking.
ones, haven't done that. So, okay. So yeah, just rushing record, like that's. I feel like that's a default top 3 rushing year ever. So I'm gonna go with that.
So, I looked it up. Eric Dickerson finished second in MVP voting, behind Dan Marino, who threw for 5,000 yards and 48 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's valid.
Holy shit! Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
84.
crazy because Dan held that record for a long time. So we have the rushing yards record and the passing yard record for like
What year was
20
that?
years.
84? And 84 to go for 5K and 48 touchdowns is insanity.
This is really like
That's why Troy Aikman was a bum.
this is like different level thing. I know this is like higher level thinking, but like I wonder if there was like some defensive rule change that year where I think it's kind of weird we had the passing yards record and the rushing yard record get set in a single year on the same year.
It's
that was a
possible.
record for like 20 years. I wonder if something like in the NFL changed,
That's very possible. All right. Moving on. 2012 MVP Adrian Peterson, the last running back to win MVP. He had 2,097 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns, 217 receiving yards, and 1 touchdown.
This was
Detroit Lions legend.
2012. Lions legend, Adrian
Busy
Peterson.
for Lions legend.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to go with the Lion legend. One pride, baby. Let's go.
One pride, baby.
Hang the banner.
I'm going to go with Adrian Peterson.
He was crazy that year.
Again, to kind of, just looking at it, it's like Donnie said, they ran the ball more a little bit back then. So Eric Dickerson obviously got, and he had more touches. He averaged 5 yards to carry. AP did this in 2012. You look at like the Legion of Boom, all these great defenses. 2012 had some nasty defenses, and he averaged 6 yards a carry and basically 2,100 yards. AP was a monster in 2012. Then he decided to be dumb off field.
Am I crazy? Didn't he tear his ACL in 2011? That's what I'm trying to look up right now because
It might have been the
He had
year
not-
after.
the year before he had 2,000 yards, he had 970, and then in 2014, he had to have been injured too because he only played one game. In the following season, he ran for 1,500 yards. But so I might sound dumb here. No, I'm pretty sure it was 2011 because in 2011 he only played in 12 games, and then he played for 16 the following year. So I'm going to go with Adrian Peterson solely because I'm very confident that he tore his ACL the year before that, back when like coming back from an ACL tear wasn't like a guarantee. So to come back and rush for almost 2,100 yards is kind of truly unheard of, especially at that time, given it was only a decade ago or so. But
He did.
Yeah,
Adrian Peterson tore his ACL and MCL on Christmas Eve in 2011.
and that's the other thing. He tore, like Kyler Murray tore his ACL 2 years ago around Christmas time, and he didn't come back until like week 10 of the following year. For a running back to tear their ACL around Christmas and come back, what is that? 7 months later, like 7 months later, be playing football again. Like that's, I don't know if that'll happen.
At that high of a level.
That's fucking crazy.
Give me
so
AP. AP's.
I'm gonna go AP, even if it wasn't. He could have came back and ran for 1,800 yards, and I would say that's better, just coming off that kind of injury. So, yeah, give me AP.
All right. Next up, we have fourth and wrong Hall of Famer, 1963 Jim Brown. He finished.
Go with a Billy Cannon.
Nah. Billy Cannon didn't make the list, unfortunately.
Thank goodness.
He would have been a lock. Had to have been better.
1963 Jim Brown. He had 1,863 yards rushing, 12 rushing touchdowns with 268 receiving yards, and 3 touchdowns in 14 games.
Give me Saquon. Bro was playing against my neighbor.
How many games did he play?
14.
I take that back. I realized 14. Hold on. Let me rethink it a little bit.
1,863
I
rushing
forget.
yards in 14
1,800
games.
yards in 14 games.
14
Back then when they fucking didn't even have a shotgun offense, it was literally just fucking handing that shit straight up.
Yeah, 14 games. Yeah, give me Jim Brown.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm going Jim.
Brown or someone else?
Jim
Brown.
You said give me Jim. So.
Jim Barkley, actually.
Jimmy John. Like,
Jim Barkley.
Jimmy Johns.
Yeah, the 14 games thing is crazy. Obviously it was a different time in that skews stuff, but that's just too many yards in 2 little games. Give me Jim Brown.
all right. Did not win the MVP that year, by the way. He
Who
got
the fuck won MVP?
He got the voters fatigue. The quarterback Y.A. Tittle won the MVP.
I mean, shit, Wyatt Tittle's a Hall of Famer. Don't say it like that.
He had 3,148 passing yards, 36 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions.
That's actually incredible for back then.
In 1963.
I was waiting for you to say like 30 touchdowns and 25 interceptions. I'm not gonna lie. Like, that's pretty good.
But yep, and then
no tape to show for it. That's crazy.
no tape to show for it. And then moving on to our final running back season, 1997 MVP Barry Sanders.
It's Barry. It's always Barry.
2,053 rushing yards, 11 rushing touchdowns, 305 receiving yards, and 3 receiving touchdowns.
Most yards per carry out of all the running backs. And he asked the guys to take him out of the game. He did. I don't even think he finished that game. He got he got 2K or whatever he got.
Well, to be fair, Saquon didn't either.
Oh, I know.
He didn't finish his last game.
Well, I'm taking Barry. Absolutely. Barry probably is the best running back season. It's close. But if I'm thinking most dominant running back season of all time, it's probably Barry.
Yeah, I would agree. Give me Barry.
This is tough because when you first said it, I was going to go Saquon. I'm not going to lie. But then I started thinking about probably the biggest difference between the two, and I would say O-line. Saquon running behind the Eagles O-line, which is very, very good. It's not the best, but it's extremely good versus the fucking nobodies the Lions were trying.
What year was that, Dallas?
97.
97. Like, I think they had Lomas Brown, who is like a Lions all-time great, but he didn't have Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata. Like, he didn't have those guys.
So here's the Lions O-line. Do you guys know any of the? I know one of them.
Lomas Brown should be the only person we fucking know.
He's not on here.
Oh, maybe. I think
Ray Roberts, Mike Compton, Kevin Glover, Jeff Hartings, and Larry Tharp. By the way, these guys, the left tackle played 4 years in the NFL. The left guard played 3. The right guard played 1 year in the NFL. The right tackle played 4 years. The center played 12 years in the NFL. Kevin Glover was the only guy. He made 2 Pro Bowls. He played Detroit for a long time. But yeah, the rest of them combined didn't even play 16 games in the NFL. None of them made a Pro Bowl. None of them got any awards.
I was going to say, in their defense, how many O-linemen from the 90s can we name, period? But after all that, yeah, I guess we don't have to respect them. So, yeah, I'm going to go Barry just because he was dealing with such a deficit. Even if statistically his weren't better, like, you got to go. You got to go Barry.
All Lions proceeded to go 9-7 that year.
9-7 the MVP is crazy.
All right, with that being said, the fourth
Joe Burrow.
I wasn't gonna say that.
I was gonna say Joe Burrow.
I was not gonna say that. I thought it. I wasn't gonna say it. With that being said, the Fourth and Wrong podcast has determined Saquon Barkley's season.
Barkley.
that Saquon Barkley's season this year is roughly a top 8 or 9 season of all time.
Not better than Barry's, not better than LT's, not better than Adrian Peterson's.
Yep, I'll list it off. Barry Sanders, Jim Brown, Adrian Peterson, Eric Dickerson, Marshall Faulk, OJ, LT, and then the 50-50 in my eyes is that Sean Alexander year.
Bro, you're forgetting one of the
We
best
all
seasons.
determined it was.
Where's
No,
Amir?
that's
Where's
right.
Amir Abdullah 2015?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
I mean, that's probably where I would have had it. Definitely top 10, fringe top 5. Pretty on the line.
So yeah,
Well,
A little lower than I thought it would be, but you know.
I still think it's a little low just considering the eras, but I mean, it's not crazy.